Αξιότιμοι συνάδελφοι του Υπουργείου Πολιτισμού και Αθλητισμού και των ξένων αρχαιολογικών σχολών, κυρίες και κύριοι, καλησπέρα σας. Με ιδιαίτερα μεγάλη χαρά σας καλωσορίσω απόψε διαζώης στο ετήσιμο απολογισμό του Σουηδικού Αρχαιολογικού Ινστιτούτου, σχεδόν όπως προ-πανδημία με κοινό. Ονομάζομαι Γιάννη Wallensten και είμαι η Διευθύντρια του Σουηδικού Ινστιτούτου. Τη χρονιά που πέρασε κυριάρχησε για άλλη μια φορά η πανδημία, με τα γνωστά σε όλους μας επακόλουθα. Ωστόσο, έχοντας πλέον πολύτιμες εμπειρίες από το 2020, κατά κάποιο τρόπο εν είδη ψηφιακό εργαστηρίου, καταφέραμε και βρήκαμε πιο εύκολα τρόπους να χειριστούμε τις προκλήσεις της πανδημίας και να υλοποιήσουμε σχεδόν εξ ολοκλήρου τις προγραμματισμένες για το 2021 δραστηριότητες του Ινστιτούτου. Και έτσι, χωρίς άλλη καθυστέρηση, αλλά με περηφάνεια, προχωρώ στη παρουσίαση του έργου του Σουηδικού Αρχαιολογικού Ινστιτούτου Αθηνών κατά το 2021. Esteemed colleagues of the Greek Ministry of Culture and Sports and of the Foreign Archaeological Schools, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Jenny Wallensten, and I am the director of the Swedish Institute at Athens. It's a great pleasure to welcome you here tonight in what is almost a pre-pandemic setting with a live audience, albeit with masks. I begin our report with the archaeological field campaigns. Work in Chania and Hermione could unfortunately not go ahead, but work was carried out at Athens in the Argolid, Calabria Poros in the Saronic Gulf, and Palamas Vlochos in Thessaly. And we start with Athens. Swedish excavations at Athens started already in 1921, so in fact we celebrate their 100th anniversary this year. Although Athens' location by the sea must have played an important part in its history, the surrounding bay has never been the focus of an underwater study. In order to prepare for a possible project, a pilot study was conducted this October, consisting of a maritime archaeological survey in the waters outside Toulon in the Argolid. The campaign was a collaborative effort between the Greek effort of underwater antiquities, Stockholm University, the Swedish Institute at Athens, with additional participants from Göteborg University and the company Nordic Maritime Group. And what follows is the report of the Athena team. An old photograph, here to the left, shows structures visible through the clear water at the seabed along the western coast of the Castrati Cliff. In the early publications, the question of whether these were man-made or created by nature was left open. The early excavators, Otto Fredin and Axel V. Persson, admitted that a wall-like structure may have been used as a harbor, since it could have formed a breakwater for smaller crafts in the southern end, but they were inclined to see it as a natural formation. This structure was re-examined during the fieldwork in 2021. The sea level of the Mediterranean has risen for the past millennia, and the water erosion has caused portions of the city wall to collapse and fall down into the sea. Since stone material that falls into the sea erodes and cakes together into something that can look like masonry, it's not always easy to assess whether structures or formations at the seabed are natural or created by humans. To the right, you see a contour map of the possible harbor structure east of Castrati, also from the old field publication. There are several indications that Athens harbor included the entire basin from the Castrati Peninsula in the east to the strait between Toulon and the island of Romvi in the west. From a maritime archaeological point of view, harbor areas in general contain a lot of archaeological remains below water. Besides the most obvious structures such as jetties, quays, or breakwaters, it's common to find ballast material, usually stones, lost anchors, shipwrecks, as it actually happens more than you would think that ships sink while they are anchored due to storms, leakage, etc. It's also very common to find vessels that have been scuttled in secondary use as breakwaters, landfills, and similar. Anchored ships or activities near the shoreline also have a tendency to cause massive cultural layers to build up at the seabed. So against this background, the objectives of the 21 campaign were, first, to ascertain the occurrence of such harbour-related archaeological remains below water within the entire harbour area, and two, to assess and describe the possible harbour structures in the waters east of the Castrati Peninsula, which has been which has been the subject for various archaeological speculations for the last 100 years. In order to map the potential presence of remains at the seabed, the sea bottom in the entire area was mapped using side-scanned sonar. This is a device that uses echo sound to record objects which protrude above the seabed. The side-scan sonar is towed under a boat and maps a corridor of about 150 meters. The seabed in the area mostly consists of sand, and to an extent this provides favorable conditions, as objects that diverge and stick up from the otherwise flat seabed provides distinctive and clear echoes. The survey resulted in a large number of anomalies that were positioned with GPS. And this is a satellite photo showing the area covered by the side-scan sonar. The red dots show the sonar targets, anomalies that were visited and inspected by diving archaeologists. In total, 15 sonar targets were inspected by diving archaeologists. All of these turn out to be very recent remains or natural objects. The absence of wrecks, anchors, or historical cultural layers are likely due to sedimentation. The seabed consists of sand, which most likely cover old remains. The most conspicuous archaeological structure observed underwater is located at the seabed in direct connection to the prehistoric settlement of Asini. The inner part of the bay east of the Castrati Peninsula consists of a sandy beach that slopes into the water. The bay area was surveyed by diving archaeologists. Close to land in the inner part of the bay by the seabed is covered by some large stones in the water, but about 30 meters from the shore, the seabed consists of sand except for a ridge of natural rock that stretches out perpendicular to the shoreline. The most important result of the archaeological survey was to reveal that there is a large built-up harbour structure in this area. In fact, the most prominent part of it is located just north of the area that Frodin and Persson, the early excavators, discussed as a possible harbour. From diving inspection, it was made clear that the construction consists of a plateau built up of rock and stones. The construction is best preserved in the northern part, where the delimitation of the platform forms a clear demarcation against the flat sand bottom. The northeast demarcation is also visible from above through aerial photographs. The demarcation in the northern part of the platform stretches along a straight line and ends circa 70 meters outside of the present-day shoreline. Along the western edge, the platform is not as well preserved and its shape not as well defined. The construction has collapsed and the stones have fallen out in deeper water. In the southern part, the platform rather has the character of a wall that runs parallel to the shoreline. In the northern, most well-preserved part of the plateau, several room-forming structures were observed. The impression is that these are remains of buildings, small houses or huts, placed on the harbour plateau. During fieldwork, the northernmost area was documented using a GoPro video camera. Still photos from the film were subsequently used to create a three-dimensional impression of the area with photogrammetry. The result was beyond expectations. However, the built structures on top of the plateau are still very complicated to interpret. The stone material is eroded and reshaped, and in some cases the stones are caked together in new formations. During the fieldwork, some of these formations that gave the impression of being the remains of buildings were sketched underwater in order to mediate the impression of roofs. A sketch is, of course, an interpretation and should be regarded as a tentative result, as the extension and demarcation of the walls are difficult to assess. The perhaps most reliable and informative structures are the floor levels, which both may be regarded as relatively intact and also very rich in information. The water depth at the estimated floor level was measured using the depth meter on the diving computer. And it turned out that the floor level is located 2.4 to 2.7 meters below the present water surface, whereas the depth of the sandy seabed outside the artificial plateau is 4.4 meters. The existence of the large built-up platform east of Kastraki raises many questions, not least as it remains to be dated. Right now, it's not possible to link it to any known structure or settlement on land. Hopefully, future archaeological efforts may shed more lights on this matter. And we move now towards the Saronic Gulf and Calabria, today's island of Poros. Since 2015, the Swedish Institute has conducted excavations in the presumed area of the ancient settlement to the south of the sanctuary of Poseidon, under the direction of Arto Penttinen and Anton Bonnier. After a 2-season hiatus, excavation in Area L was resumed. Previous investigations in this Area L between 15 and 18 revealed several structures that date from the late Classical and to the Roman period. Given the finds of multiple storage vessels and a press stone dating to the Hellenistic period, as well as spaces containing debris of cooking vessels and fineware pottery, we believe that much of the area was used for cooking and dining activities, and the number of large storage vessels found in situ and the size of the complex seem to suggest that these activities were carried out within a communal setting. In 2018, we also found parts of a large stone-laid feature, defined as Feature 3, in connection with a thick ash deposit. Multiple animal bones and both finewares and cookingwares dating to the 3rd century BC were also uncovered in connection with the feature. The bones seem to belong to cattle and tuna, and cut marks suggest that the meat had been cut into portions. In 2021, we were able to excavate a larger segment of Feature 3, which seems to consist of several walls enclosing a surface formed by a stone packing deposit. We could, however, not expose the full feature due to the presence of Roman walls positioned directly above it. It is therefore difficult to fully understand the nature of the stone-laid feature, though presumably it may be linked to large-scale cooking activities again, occurring in the 3rd century BC. The later walls are nevertheless interesting as they provide further information on the structural development of the area in the Roman period. In several parts of Area L, a thick construction fill, dating probably to the 1st century AD, has been uncovered. The fill seems to support a new level, reusing some of the earlier walls with new stretches built on top of the earlier structures. The finds of the Roman walls in 21 also suggests that new structures were built in Area L during this phase. Further evidence for the structural environment was also provided by the exposure of a pebble floor in the northern part of the trench. This seems to belong to the same period. The floor was first uncovered in 2018, but in 21 further bits were exposed. Through the excavations conducted in Area L, we have a much better understanding of the chronology of the ancient settlement and the development of the structural environment in Area L from the 4th century to the Roman period. Further studies of the recovered finds, including animal bones and macrobotanical remains, to be carried out in 22 and 23, will hopefully provide further information on the use of this area of the ancient settlement in the different phases. In addition to this field campaign, work was also begun on the publication and analysis of cistern F04 and its deposit. Located at the entrance of the sanctuary, this cistern was connected to the previously published cistern F03 through a tunnel, and together they provided a relatively small volume of water, and this suggests that they were unsuitable for everyday utilitarian needs. Instead, it's likely that they were primarily intended to supply the water required for purification when entering the temenos. The fill of the cistern is highly interesting. Preliminary indications suggest that it was deposited during the late 2nd century BC, providing a terminus ante quem for the period of use of the system. Most notably, the system contained not only much well-preserved ceramics, but also large pieces of burnt wood, carbonized seeds, and various animal and fish bones, for example from tuna. This closes the Calabria report of Anton Bonnier and Patrik Klingborg, and we move north to the Palamas Archaeological project. In Thessaly, the Institute's collaboration with the Effort of Antiquities of Karditsa continues through the Palamas Archaeological project. The work of 21 focused on several sites within the municipality of Palamas, including the ancient city at Vlochos, and as well as the multi-period fortress site at Metamorphosi. And what follows is the report of the Palamas team. For the first time within the Greek-Swedish collaboration, excavation was conducted in the ancient city at Vlochos. This is where the project has been working since 2016. The location of the trench was selected on the basis of the extensive geophysical surveys carried out in the area since 2016, including ground-penetrating radar, ground resistivity, and magnetometry survey. At the location, a smaller structure with 2 rooms could be discerned in all the geophysical results, indicating a building constructed on a different alignment than the houses of the classical Hellenistic urban landscape surrounding it. This indicated that the structure potentially belongs to a different phase of habitation than the main 4th and 3rd century BCE phases. A limited trench was put out to cover both the inside and outside of the structure, which according to the radar results would not be more than 40 centimeters from the ground surface. This proved to be correct as excavation started, with well-preserved foundation walls appearing at this very depth. In essence, the results of the geophysical survey corresponded exceedingly well with what was found during excavations, as can be seen in the figure. The excavations revealed that remains of a small building with 2 rooms, just as predicted, the foundations of which indicated 2 separate construction phases. The building technique and the ceramic material suggest that the eastern room of the building was constructed in the 6th century CE with a wide door opening in its southwestern wall. Destruction debris, including large tile fragments and shattered yet complete vessels surrounding the building, indicate that it was destroyed at some point in the same century. The dating makes it probable that the building belongs to the early Byzantine phase 4 of habitation at Vlochos, which previously had mainly been discernible in the Justinianic fortification walls on the adjacent hill slope. As the foundations of the western room in the building was clearly constructed on top of the destruction layer and much less sturdily built, it soon became evident that the room belonged to a different phase of habitation. The absence of any roof tiles within the rooms can probably be explained by the building being roofed with thatch during this reuse phase. Coarse pottery belonging to the so-called Slavic ware type was found in situ in a small hearth in the room, dating the reuse of the building to the 8th century CE. This period has previously not been identified at Vlochos, and the excavation consequently produced valuable information regarding the archaeological site after the abandonment of the fortified settlement of the early Byzantine period. Continued geophysical prospection was carried out a few hundred meters east of the excavation area, in the part of the site containing a small fortified town of the late 3rd and early 4th century CE. Earth resistance survey had previously proven effective at Vlochos, and the aim with the 21 campaign was to extend the use of this method. However, extremely poor weather conditions in the autumn made that the soil was too saturated with moisture for the work to produce any high-definition results. It was only towards the end of the campaign, when sunny weather had dried out some of the ground, that more promising results could be achieved. In essence, the work managed to reveal the outlines of the late Roman fortification wall in more detail, providing a more precise image of the wall trace. The results further show that in this late Roman phase, the fortified enceinte clearly reused the large classical Hellenistic courtyard gate named by the project the Chiron Gate. The existence of internal divisions within the gate indicates that it might have been used for secondary purposes, maybe for habitation, as has been noted previously at Thessalian New Halos. A chance discovery of a stone packing protruding out of the sides of the adjacent 1960s irrigation canal allowed for the identification of a probable bridge just outside this gate. The alignment of the remains fits perfectly with the position of the gate, and it is probable that the bridge crossed a small stream, the crop marks of which can still be seen in 1940s aerial photographs. The level of detail provided by the ground resistance survey allows for a more accurate artistic reconstruction of the gate complex in the Hellenistic period. And I really congratulate the team for these amazing reconstructions. On the Kourtikiano hill, just west of the nearby village of Metamorphosi, an initial archaeological survey was conducted on the site of a multi-phase fortress found on the crest of the hill. Previous German and French colleagues had noted the existence of several phases of construction here, which could be confirmed through the architectural recording of the remains. The oldest phase of construction at the location appears to be a classical period hill fort, consisted of a lentoid-shaped walled enclosure without any towers. This could possibly relate to the sizable archaic and classical settlement excavated by the effort of Antiquities of Karditsa at the foot of the hill. At the center of this classical enceinte, on the very top of the hill, are the fragmentary remains of a small, completely circular fortlet, only 100 meters in circumference. Judging from the preserved remains, this appears to have originally had 6 equally spaced towers, all semicircular, forming a small hexapyrgion. The masonry and style of execution indicates that it was constructed in the Hellenistic period, but the project has yet failed to identify any clear parallels to this extraordinary feature. Reusing much of the stones of the hexapyrgion and partially built over the remains of the classical period hill fort are the well-preserved walls and towers of an early Byzantine fortification. This encloses the hilltop area as well as a section of the very steep slope to the southwest, with 6 rectangular towers recorded so far. The difficult terrain made that the slope area was not surveyed in 21, but further fortifications were noted down the hill slope, and future work at the site will aim not only at surveying the remaining architecture, but also the surface pottery in which the site is very rich. Finally, the team recorded a remarkable Latin language inscription walled into the 19th century church of Aios Charalambos in Palamas. The placement of the inscription caused some practical issues, but using digital recording techniques developed for the documentation of prehistoric rock art, this digital frottage was generated, showing the inscriptions in great detail. The inscription reveals that the stone was probably a boundary marker or a terminus set up by the previously unattested imperial procurator Aurelius Iason by the authority of the Emperor Commodus. The emperor's title Felix was only adopted in 184 or 185 CE, thus the inscription should date from between this date and the emperor's death in 192. Before ending the report, the directors of the Palamas projects, and myself of course, warmly thank Professor Mark Gilling, head of the Archaeology and Anthropology Department at Bournemouth University, and Palamas Mayor Yorgos Sakirariou for constantly supporting and facilitating fieldwork. In the entrance to the Swedish History Museum in Stockholm stands a cast of a very large stone lion. It's impossible to miss, but yet few know the fascinating story of the original lion and how a copy of it ended up in Stockholm. At an unknown date, the original monument was set up in the Piraeus. It was probably carved in the 4th century BC as a funerary monument, and at some point in time it was moved from its original context and transformed into a water carrier with a water pipe running along its back and ending in a spout in the mouth of the lion. During the Venetian campaign against the Ottomans in the late 1600s, this mighty lion caught the eye of General Morosini, who brought it with him to Italy. And there this Piraeus lion was set up in Venice by the entrance to the Arsenale, the naval station of the city, where it stands guard until this day. But there was more to the lion than what Morosini apparently saw. In the late 18th century, the Swedish diplomat and Egyptologist Johan David Åkerblad passed through Venice, and he noticed traces of inscriptions carved on the lion, which at a closer look could be identified as runes, the written language of the Vikings. 3 different inscriptions with no apparent connection between them can be identified. One runs along the lion's left side and front leg, a second along the left thigh, and a third is carved in the right side and on the chest of the lion. And they date from the 11th century CE. According to the latest interpretation of the runes made by Torgun Snedal, the best preserved inscription on the left side of the lion lets us know that the runes were carved in this harbor by Swedes on the lion, for example, and apparently on the initiative of a group of warriors to the memory of the man Horse, who passed away before getting paid for something or other. And whereas the group of warriors that stopped by Piraeus was probably a mixed bunch of Scandinavians, it is very likely that all men mentioned in the fragmentary inscriptions, as well as the one actually inscribing the massive body of the lion, were so-called Varangians, mercenaries of Norse or Anglo-Saxon origins that served the Byzantine emperors, some even as an elite bodyguard of the emperor himself. The lion from Piraeus has stood outside in the open for about 2,300 years. So its surface is damaged by time as well as by bullets and the voyage to Venice. And so the runes are fading. And to document the monument and preserve it in its present shape, the Swedish Institute at Athens, in collaboration with Gothenburg University, the Swedish National Heritage Board, and the Swedish Institute in Rome, set out to create a model of the lion. And after photogrammetry work performed in November 21 by Robin Rönnlund and Rich Potter, we now have a model that can provide important documentation as well as a very efficient tool for runic researchers. It has hitherto been complicated to study the remaining letters with the naked eye only, outside of course, and thus subjected to variations in weather and natural light, often under the glaring Italian sun. And now through the model, the marble surface can be studied in different and controlled lighting conditions, close up, and we suspect that the Piraeus lion keeps more surprises in store. And I take the opportunity to warmly thank the Soprintendenza Archeologia Belle Arti e Paesaggio per il Comune di Venezia e Laguna and the Marina Militare, Istituto di Studi Militari Marittimi Venezia, Museo Storico Navale, for giving us permission to document the lion. And I now briefly continue with our other activities. The Institute was, of course, very happy to welcome several scholars to Athens after such a long hiatus and to see the Nordic Library open its doors again. And before I say anything else, I want to thank the staff of the Nordic Library for being so helpful during these difficult times with scans, answering questions, finding references, etc. You have been absolutely wonderful. Back to the associated researchers and visiting scholars. Christian Göransson from Gothenburg University came to pursue his study on ancient Sarini, and Anne-Louise Chalin worked on Mycenaean figurines in a project examining choroplastics as an expression of regional identity. Robin Rönnlund continued his project, Cyclic Cities, Urbanization and Deurbanization in Archaic to Roman Greece, as a Wernigen Fellow and affiliated both with the Institute and the University of Thessaly. And moreover, we are very happy about a new collaboration with a project based at Uppsala University and headed by Ingela Nilsson 4 members of the research program Retracing Connections, Byzantine Story Worlds in Greek, Arabic, Georgian and Old Slavonic, funded by Riksbankens Jubileumsfond, work under the aegis of the Institute. And so I take this opportunity to officially welcome Daria Resch, Evstratios Papaioannou, Charalambos Messis and Dimitrios Grekas to the Institute. Our scholarship supported a wide variety of topics this year, from the work of the Swedish Red Cross in wartime Greece to sacrificial ritual, from analysis of geophysical field data to the correspondence of Martin P. Nilsson. We also saw the publication of a new volume of the Opuscula, the joint publication of the Swedish Institutes at Athens and in Rome. This volume is filled with articles about the work of the Swedish Institute here in Athens, from Vlocos, from Calabria, and a special section from the project in Hermione. And we also saw an edited volume, edited by Jeanette Forsén, about Aios Elias in Arcadia, from early sanctuary to medieval village. The lectures and conference program also started getting back to normal. Within the Waterwork series, Assistant Director Patrik Klingborg co-organized 2 workshops, Water for the Masses Across and Beyond the Mediterranean in May, and New Currents in Ancient Water Studies 2 in November. Now, Patrik is here with us tonight, currently on paternal leave, and will after that go back to Sweden and join the faculty of Uppsala University. I wish to thank you, Patrik, for your fantastic work at the Institute. We are very sorry to see you go, but we wish you all the best in Uppsala, but expect to see you back in one context or other very soon. Patrik's 2 all-digital workshops, they were very successful, but I will admit that it was wonderful to finally be able to welcome a small live audience to the Institute in June. With the conferences Confronting Evil in Ancient Greece and Twilight of the Gods, Greek Cult Places and the Transition to Late Antiquity, with these conferences we started exploring the hybrid format, and I personally warmly thank my co-organizers in for these conferences, in the case of Apotropia, Maria Chidiroglu and Maria Spathi, and for Twilight, all the colleagues of the Roman Seminar of Athens, for such a pleasant and very professional collaboration. The Athens Greek Religion Seminar also went from all digital to hybrid and attracted a large crowd all throughout the year, on several occasions, actually with participants from 4 continents joining. For some very early, for others very late, but this was absolutely, I think, the digital format at its very best. Among the many interesting lectures of 21, I can only single out a few. The Vikings invaded Athens in autumn, invited by the Danish, Norwegian and Swedish Institute. 3 lectures by Scandinavian scholars presented current research on various aspects of Viking society as a follow-up to the successful conference Vikings in the Mediterranean that took place in 19. In October, we had the honor of welcoming Professor Nicole Belaïch of the École Pratique des Hautes Études, who gave the biannual Martin P. Nilsson Lecture on Greek Religion, On the Giant's Shoulders, the Eleusinian Mysteries in the Roman Period, between historiography, literary tradition, and epigraphy. And in November, in collaboration with the Finnish Institute at Athens, we inaugurated a new lecture series in honor of Professor Robin Hägg, previous director of the Swedish Institute at Athens. And Professor James Wright, emeritus of Bryn Mawr University, and of course previous director of the American School here in Athens, gave 2 brilliant lectures entitled The Archaeological History of the Mycenaean Palace, in front of an audience that included, amongst others, Robin Hägg's 2 sons, now grown men, of course, but they grew up at the Swedish Institute. And so their visit in November added some crucial details to the history of our institute building at Mitseon 9, which is approximately 100 years. So we had not known, for example, that the entrance hall stairs also work very well when riding on mattresses, for example, nor that there was a flourishing rental car office in a cupboard in one of the bathrooms, complete with opening hours and the slogan, "We care." For the first time in 2 years, all educational program schedule took place with some corona adjustments. An April undergraduate program on the archaeology of the Cyclades had to go online, and its field excursion delayed until September. We take the opportunity to warmly thank Stavros Paspalas, Alexander Masarakis, and Ioannis Bitis, who helped make the online program almost a live experience. The autumn 2-month MA traveling seminar, as well as the high school and the teachers' courses, all went according to plan, surprisingly smoothly, I have to say. And I think that this year's students, more than ever, appreciated the value of being taught on site, living the landscape and its monuments. We also presented a rich program within the context of cultural exchange between Sweden and Greece in 2021. During the unique Athens Garden Festival, together with the Association for the Swedish Language here in Athens and the Swedish Embassy, we participated in the European Day of Languages, as usual, and the Swedish Institute and the Swedish Embassy were also two of the head organizers of a number of activities, both scientific and more playful, as you see in the image, that focused on bees and other pollinators in urban settings. And we thank the Embassy and the Language Association for yet another fruitful collaboration. We look forward to many more. And if there are colleagues here tonight with gardens, consider installing a bee hotel in your gardens in order to help the environments. We have the contacts and the details for that. 2021 was a very musical year. We supported the participation of saxophone player Martin Virén and his band Bear Garden in the Athens Technopolis Jazz Festival, and of Swedish quartet Utile Dulci at the Athens Baroque Festival in October. Both these concerts were pre-recorded, but autumn finally offered the possibilities to support live music. And we were very happy to once again fill our guest house in Cavalla with advanced jazz students from Greece and Sweden. They were taught by each other's teachers, played together, and finally, after a few days of playing together, they gave a small concert in Cavalla. Moreover, for the very first time, the Swedish Institute at Athens awarded scholarships to support the cultural exchange between our two countries. And violin player Rebecca Karlsson and guitarist Andreas Hordakis became the first scholarship holders, and we thank them warmly for their generosity and their wish to share their skills and experience with young musicians. The guest house in Cavalla usually welcomes researchers, artists, photographers, writers, etc., in need of calm, concentration, and a creative atmosphere. This year the house had to remain completely closed until June, but the staff kept very busy with reparations, renovations, as well as with a first-time inventory of all flora in the garden. This has never been done, but it's an important endeavor since the garden has protected status together with the guest house itself. When we could open for guests, it was of course with restrictions in place and less visitors, but the very stimulating climate created in the meeting between science and art, I think, immediately came back with the guests. A highlight of autumn was a visit by the member of the Swedish Academy, poet Gila Mosaed, and during a memorable evening, her poetry was introduced by Georgia Triandafilidou and Despina Kaitati Khoyoumi, and then read in both Greek and Swedish by the poet herself and philologist Katerina Iliadou. And I would like to share her spontaneous reaction to hearing her words translated and read in Greek. That my poems have been translated into a beautiful language with deep roots in the history of humanity makes me happy. I admire the Greek language. It sparks my curiosity. And joining in with this admiration for Greece and its beautiful language, I start closing by thanking all colleagues who make work here possible. Θα ήθελα, όπως πάντα, να εκφράσω τις θερμές ευχαριστίες μας στους συναδέλφους του Υπουργείου Πολιτισμού και Αθλητισμού και τις τοπικές εφορίες Αρχαιοτήτων για την πολύτιμη βοήθειά τους. Ιδιαίτερα ευχαριστούμε το Υπουργείο Πολιτισμού που μας παραχωρεί τις απαραίτητες άδειες. Ευχαριστούμε την κυρία Υπουργό Λίνα Μεντώνη, τον Γενικό Γραμματέα του Υπουργείου, τον κύριο Γιώργο Διδασκάλου, την προϊσταμένη της Γενικής Διεύθυνσης Αρχαιοτήτων και Πολιτιστικής Κληρονομιάς, κυρία Πολυξένη Ανταμβελένη, την προϊσταμένη της Διεύθυνσης Προϊστορικών και Κλασικών Αρχαιοτήτων, κυρία Έλνα Κοντούρη, και την προϊσταμένη της Διεύθυνσης Βυζαντινών και Μεταβυζαντινών Αρχαιοτήτων, η κυρία Ιουλία Παπαγεωργίου. Στο τμήμα Εποπτείας Ελληνικών και Αλλοδαπών Επιστημονικών Ιδρυμάτων και Συντονισμού Θεμάτων Διεθνών Συνεργασίων και Οργανισμών της Διεύθυνσης Προϊστορικών και Κλασικών Αρχαιοτήτων, εκφράσαμε τις ευχαριστίες μας στην προϊσταμένη κυρία Κωνσταντίνα Βενίση και στην κυρία Γεωργία Φακάρου, η στήριξη των οποίων υπήρξε όπως πάντα ιδιαίτερα πολύτιμη. Ευχαριστούμε θερμά την προϊσταμένη της Εφορίας Αρχαιοτήτων Αργολίδας, κυρία Άλκεστη Παπαδημητρίου, και από την ίδια εφορία την κυρία Αγγελική Κόσιβα. Εκφράσουμε τις ευχαριστίες μας και στην Εφορία Αρχαιοτήτων Καρδίτσας, στην προϊσταμένη κυρία Μαρία Βαλιοπούλου, στον τμήματάρχη Κώστα Βουσαξάκη και στην αρχαιολόγο Φωτεινή Τσιούκα. Ευχαριστούμε επίσης την προϊσταμένη της Εφορίας Αρχαιοτήτων Μεσσενίας, Ευαγγελία Μιλίτση και Χαλιά, και στην ίδια εφορία τον κύριο Σταμάτη Φριτσίλα. Οι ευχαριστίες μας εκφράζονται και στην προϊσταμένη της Εφορίας Αρχαιοτήτων Πειριώς και Νήσων, κυρία Στέλλα Χρυσουλάκη, και στην κυρία Μαρία Γιαννοπούλου. Θερμές ευχαριστίες και στην προϊσταμένη της Εφορίας Χανίων, Ελένη Παπαδοπούλου, και στην κυρία Ευτυχία Πρωτοπαπαδάκη, όπως επίσης στην κυρία Μαρία Ανδρεαδάκη Βλαζάκη, τέως Γενική Γραμματέα. Τέλος, απευθύνομαι τις ευχαριστίες μας στον αναπληρωτή προϊσταμένο της Εφορίας Εναλίων Αρχαιοτήτων, Δημήτρη Κουρκομέλη Ροδόσταμο, και στην ίδια εφορία στην κυρία Παναγιώτα Γκαλιατσάτου. We furthermore thank all colleagues and sponsors in Greece and in Stockholm, in Sweden, that helped create this year's program. And, as always, I wish to close by highlighting the fantastic work of the staff of the Institute. Assistant Director Patrik Klingborg, Administrators Eleni Androvic and Katerina Gabirakis, Cavalla Curator Elisabeth Gullberg, Poppy Kalli, Dimitra Tsiura, Irini Damascu, Stella Lia Vakipoulou, Vladimir Kaitsis. Your enthusiasm, hard work, and patience. We've had a lot of last-minute changes and we've had to think of a lot of creative alternative solutions this year. You have managed everything so well, and I thank you from the bottom of my heart. Thank you for your attention.